everybody. It is the third Tuesday of the month at 1 p.m. and you know what that means. Today is Tuesday Tech Talk, and I am your host, Crystina Clauson. Today on the docket, we have advanced online menu mapping. So last month we talked about the basics of online menu mapping. We're going to do a little bit of a review, and then we'll talk about what to do with the information that you've learned. So really excited about this topic. I love menu mapping, and it can be a really, really creative way to show your menu to everybody. So let's go ahead and get started. I include this slide in every single webinar that we do, just so you guys get to know me a little bit. My name is Christina. I am a coach here at CaterLinked. I'm also the head of technology for CaterLinked in the Off-Premise Growth Academy, and also a CEO of Make Good Lemonade. So outside of this CaterLinked space, what I actually do is I'm a technical project manager for restaurants, and I help restaurants take advantage of their technology or onboard new technology. On the right-hand side of this slide, you'll see the points of sales and the SaaS that I'm very familiar with. As a CaterLinked coach, it's my responsibility to make sure that you guys are successful. So if you have any of these softwares, or if you're interested in any of these softwares, want to chat about them, nerd out, please feel free to reach out. That's what I'm here for at CaterLinked. So are you guys ready to get into it? What's menu mapping? Menu mapping is the process of connecting your point of sale menu items or settings to an external software. Today, we'll talk about it in the lens of online ordering, but there are so many other things that use mapping. Catering software uses mapping, which sometimes online ordering and catering software are synonymous. Sometimes they're not. It can be loyalty software. It can be inventory software. There's so many different things that use mapping. It's a really useful tool to understand, a skill to gain, not just in this particular instance, but just in general, especially if you'll be working on any of those onboarding projects. So let's go through some terminology. Analysis paralysis is something new that we'll talk about today. This is an overwhelming feeling when faced with too many decisions. Your ability to make decisions shuts down if you have too many decisions to make. Mapping, we just spoke about, connecting menu items from your point of sale to an external SaaS. Menu codes. These are also called menu levels in some points of sale. It's a way in the point of sale to manipulate a modifier to be at no extra sub in the point of sale, and we'll review that again today. And modifiers are objects in a point of sale that allow you to change an item. Nesting refers to modifiers that are dependent on other modifiers. The best examples that I can think of are like you order a steak, and we need to know what the temperature of that steak is to successfully satisfy what the point of sale needs. Or you are ordering a salad, we need to know what kind of salad dressing you're ordering in order to satisfy the point of sale needs. Or open food modifiers. These are also called food prep, open food prep. This is usually a very exhaustive list in your point of sale of all of the things that that can modify an item in your point of sale. So it can be temperature. It can be like for appetizers, first out or with food. It can be a flavor of soda. So many different things, usually a very exhaustive list. It's a really good thing to explore if you've never actually looked into it. And I'm sure if you ask your IT team, somebody would be happy to nerd out and share that with you or print you off a list. So why is menu mapping strategy important? To combat our two greatest foes, analysis paralysis dude and let's just get pizza man. These are the guys that we need to think of every day when we're trying to find solutions for our customers. So what's analysis paralysis? As we mentioned a little bit before, it's when you're provided with so many decisions or choices that you're overwhelmed and it shuts off your ability to make a decision. Now, this is a more urgent issue on the to-go side of the business, but it is something that you need to take into consideration with catering. So with catering, people are going to take their time, but you want to make sure that they have clear, concise choices. So when you're building like a new holiday menu or, a new seasonal menu, it's really important that you consider how that guest is going to digest that information. When you're building these things into an online ordering, you may want to consider offering a downloadable menu that gives them all of their options in one place, or giving them the phone number or email address for your catering sales managers so that they can go through and talk to them about sort of what their options are, and help them walk through any complex decisions. So online ordering doesn't have to be exhaustive. So make sure that you're choosing concise options for your customer, because if they put you on a tab somewhere on their computer and they're like, I'll go back and make that decision later, they may not come back at all. Or as what happens with some of us is we have 75,000 tabs open on our computer, and then our computer decides to restart in the middle of the night and you just forget where you are with stuff. So give them other ways to call back or come back to your menu. Also, complex menus. Now, this is a really, really good argument for why you should be using an online ordering provider or catering software that has an online ordering component. Is, your point of sale is meant to be exhaustive for your team so that they can offer really exhaustive options to your customers in the restaurant. For online ordering, we're not looking for complexity, because if your menu is too complex, people are going to be, just say, you know what? Let's just order 20 pizzas. We'll be fine. So you're combating the option that people have been ordering from for 20 years. So it's sort of an incumbent option to choose food that's just really, really easy. So be mindful about a complex menu. So if your packages are hard to get to or hard to find, or options are broken or required modifiers aren't included, people will just go get pizza. So also, in addition to making sure that you have online ordering software or catering software with that option, it's a really good argument for why you should have like a test location or a lab location for your point of sale. So what you want is somebody who doesn't work in menu mapping all day long to test your menu out, make sure they can get where they need to go, make sure all of those buttons are available. Having somebody in your restaurant come and give you feedback, your front of house team, is a really valuable insight in making sure that it's not too complex. So when we've combated our foes, analysis paralysis guy, or let's just go get pizza man, you can become a catering superhero. Doo, 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 doo. This is our catering superhero, Captain Sterno. And she is really, really good at combating these things. Let's find out what she does. First, let's review a little bit. Again, if it's not mappable, not mapped, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Stuff that isn't mapped, we can change, right? So when we're looking at our online menu, again, menu hierarchy, we've got categories. Within those categories are items. All of those items have modifiers on them to help a customer make sure that something is to their liking. So what's mapped? Menu ID numbers, modifier IDs, and combo groups if your restaurant uses them. Combo groups aren't super common, but the really nice thing about them is they are very stringent about how they allow things to be entered into the point of sale. So it's easier to catch issues and non-requirements and stuff like that if you are using combo groups. What is not mapped? So the rule of thumb is if you don't need to add it online, or you don't need to add it online in a particular way, then it's not mapped. So if you have a turkey sandwich in your point of sale and you can enter it as turkey sandwich or the gobbler or the not chicken sandwich, then that name isn't mapped. So it's not required to stay that way. And if it's not mapped, it can be changed. We'll talk more about that. In modifier mapping, there's 4 kind of types of modifiers. Required modifiers, those are things that need to be satisfied by the point of sale in order to get that order out the door. And optional modifiers, which are nice things to have for customers to be able to change things, but if they don't have them, it's probably not gonna, rock the world. Part of optional modifiers are menu code, their levels, and open food. They're optional modifiers, but since they're so important, I gave them kind of their own bullet points because I do what I want. And so let's talk a little bit about nesting modifiers more. So a nesting modifier is a choice that requires another choice, like salad dressing or a meat temperature. So it's dependent upon the choice in front of it. So if you choose soda, then we need to know what flavor of soda. We can't send soda out the door, right? Because if we don't know what option you're choosing, we can't send juice out the door if we don't know if you want apple juice or orange juice. So these are required modifiers to satisfy the choice before it. And open food prep modifiers, and I can't emphasize enough how just really important it is to understand the open food prep modifiers that you have available to you. If a prep modifier is already built in your point of sale, then you don't need to talk to your IT team about adding it in. So if there's like sauce on the side already exists in the point of sale, you don't need them to rebuild it. You can probably find it on your own. And again, if it's not mappable, it doesn't matter. So there are usually 2 types of open food prep mods. Upcharged and not upcharged, or like no charge. In my experience with point of sales, the way that people are usually building them is there's a $sign in front of anything that there is an upcharge to add it, and no $sign in front of something that is not charged. And again, if these things are already built, then you can generally put them in your online ordering without needing to put a ticket in or having a huge discussion or 17 meetings to get something built. You can just throw it on there yourself. So how do we use these things to think outside of the box? So they help us determine which mods to use, which modifiers we have to use, which modifiers we don't have to use. We can also hide modifiers for online ordering, and we'll get into that. Using a none or unmapped item to provide clean nesting to combat analysis paralysis. We can clear up confusion using modifiers, and we can also upsell items using modifiers. So there's a lot of exciting things that we can do once we understand how these things work. So firstly, and the goals of the online menu are make it work, make sure that all of the buttons work, they do what they are supposed to do, they're mapped to the right thing, they're charging the right prices, make it profitable. So there's no point of using online ordering if you're not going to make any money, right? Like making money is what this is supposed to do for us. And making it easy for customers to use. If it's difficult to use, then we will be combated by our mortal enemies and lose those customers. Also, last and most importantly, is making it easy for the kitchen to execute. Having things as modifiers that are standardized on the menu makes it a lot easier than trying to depend on like special instructions or notes from customers. And if there's nothing else you learned today, the kitchen is sacred. We want to do anything that we can to make sure that we're not making the kitchen's job more complex or harder with our online menu. We want to make it as easy and seamless as possible to adopt. So, what modifiers do we use? Firstly, we need to use required modifiers. Generally, your point of sale will not accept an order with an item that does not include required modifiers. And different points of sales will have different indications on what's a required modifier and not a required modifier. It's a good idea to talk to your IT team and see if they can help you through that. So you also, secondly, want to remove items that are an allergy concern. So if people like, my best friend's allergic to tomatoes. And when I was working on the brand side, he called me once and said, hey, I just tried to order something and it won't let me remove the tomatoes. So just being mindful of those things on a menu, letting people remove items that are of an allergic concern, and consider upcharged food prep items only. So This is an instance where, like, let's say you're building a new online menu or you're rebuilding your menu because it's gotten too complex, so you're trying to clean it up. This is the place where I would start, is required mods, removing items where there's an allergy concern, and then upcharge food prep items only. And those are food prep items that are an additional charge. If you have, add pickles, add lettuce, add tomatoes, add onions, add sprouts, add olives, all of those things, then somebody's not even going to think about it. They're like, heck yeah. And then you're going to end up with a really complex menu in the kitchen that the staff may have to stop and, work through. Consider only adding upcharge food prep items. So you want them to pay for it for a couple of different reasons. Number one, because it makes them think through it, but also too for your own inventory, right? If you're not charging for cheese and cheese is going out the door at an alarming rate because you're not charging for cheese, that's going to increase the food cost of your item, and also it can affect inventory depending on how you do it. But be mindful and consider just those upcharge items in the beginning. Then what you want to do is leverage your special instructions or feedback from your team to update. You have special instructions or notes with your online ordering or catering software. See if you can have a report built for you if there isn't one already available, and use your discernment and move through that list and see. A lot of people are asking for bacon for this particular sandwich, so add that as a modifier, as an upcharge with, an upcharge food prep item. So use it to add items that will that people are asking for, so they're probably willing to pay for. The other thing is ask your team, your kitchen team, ask your front of house team or your catering sales managers, what are they having issues with, or the people in the kitchen that are looking at those catering menus. What can we add? What are your top 5 pain points of things that we can add to make this a smoother experience for you? Why I would ask them for the top 5 pain points is a lot of people that work in restaurants are accustomed to hospitality and they want the entire thing online, and that doesn't really serve anybody. So ask them to use their discernment and give you the top 5, so that you're catching the biggest issues that we're having and that we're not mapping due to outliers. So be mindful of that when you're working through it. So as we mentioned before, hiding modifiers. Again, if it's not mappable, it doesn't matter. Sometimes on an online menu, a modifier appears for inventory reasons. And you're like, why the heck do I have to choose that? So let's say like you're on an online menu and you choose a roast beef sandwich. And then again, you have to choose roast beef before you choose anything else. And you're like, well, it's a roast beef sandwich. Those are in the point of sale, often for inventory reasons, but your customer doesn't need to see that. So that's one reason to hide modifiers. Another reason is if, let's say you have a really awesome catering package and you have 3 different meat choices, you want to build sort of a robust online menu. And we'll go through that in the next couple of slides. But, you want to highlight those proteins, and it may be difficult to highlight those proteins based on the character count of your descriptions, or, maybe you just want a little more of a robust menu, but making the point of sale as easy as possible. So let's say you have a fabulous Thanksgiving catering feast flyer, and we're going to focus on the silver feast today. So, it describes all the really cool things that we have in this particular package. But let's say with the online menu, we want to highlight, for example, the prime rib. We got the prime rib from Snake River. Maybe we want to put a little blurb about Snake River, but we can't put that on the description of the modifier. It has to be on the item itself. So what the hell am I talking about, and how do we do that? So let's say we want to split the silver feast into the silver turkey feast, the silver ham feast, and the silver prime rib feast, because people are making that initial selection, and with that initial selection, you're asking them to choose their protein, which is no different than, asking somebody, do you want a cowboy hamburger versus, a chicken burger versus a California burger? So people are accustomed to choosing their protein with that first option. So we're removing the complexity of the choice wall later down the line. And we're also giving people an opportunity to see a description that may be more robust about the different kinds of meats. Maybe we've got a really awesome mustard glaze on our ham, and we want to highlight that, or the Snake River prime rib, for example. So let's say on the right-hand side, this is how it looks in the point of sale. And it's ugly. There's no really pretty way to put a point of sale mapping. So you'll notice the first item is the Silver Thanksgiving Feast, and it's probably abbreviated because your point of sale doesn't allow for more than 13, 15, 17 characters. So this is the Silver Thanksgiving Feast, and that's the POS ID that they're using. And the first option that you make is a condiment group for protein. So you've got turkey, ham, and prime rib. And those are the numbers that are mapped for those items. And a combo group with the sides, the bread, the beverages, and the dessert. So this is how this particular feast is built in the point of sale with the options and how they're mapped. So this is how you would have to map this right in the point of sale, not in the point of sale, online ordering or your catering software. So in a lot of catering softwares, what we can do is online ordering, we can call something the Silver Turkey Feast, and we can rename it. Why? Because it's not mapped, so it doesn't matter what the name is. So we're using that point of sale ID, the 1231 for the feast, and we're just calling it the Turkey Feast. And then what we do is we hide the condiment options and pre-select turkey. Most online ordering software will allow you to do this unless it's part of your point of sale. Points of sales are pretty limited in what they'll allow you to do. So somebody sees it as the Silver Turkey Feast. Perfect. I want turkey for Thanksgiving. And then it goes on to allow them to choose those other options. So they've chosen the turkey. They know they've chosen turkey. You know they've chosen turkey. But you're presenting this to your point of sale in a way that your point of sale also knows that when it gets this order, it's a turkey order. And this is just making sure that it's not complex in your point of sale, but it's allowing that option for the customer on the online ordering. So what if conversely, we want to add a level? And the reason why we want to add a level is to make sure we don't have a wall of selections for a customer. Because why? Because it can cause analysis paralysis. So we're trying to take that huge chunk of information and making it smaller and hiding information that's not necessary. So for example, when classically with online ordering for to-go, because a lot of you should be familiar with that, you see a wall once in a while where they're like side salad with every single dressing under the sun. But if you're not getting a side salad, you don't give anything about what the salad dressing availability is. So if we remove that, and in your point of sale, these may be, these are mapped, right? So your side salad with ranch dressing is mapped to something, Italian dressing is mapped to something else. But if you use an item that is unmapped or mapped to a none, or there's different ways that online ordering software will present that information. But essentially you're building a non-item, and then all of your mapped items appear below it. So, if I'm ordering Brussels sprouts, I don't care what the salad dressings are for the side salad. But if I'm getting a side salad, you bet I want to know what kind of dressing is available, because I don't want, you to deliver me a dry salad to my house. That's no cool. So ways to think about this for catering would be if you have a wall of dessert options. Maybe you have 3 bars and you have 5 cakes and 7 pies. So maybe you put pies, bars, and cakes. So somebody's like, we want to order bars. And then you're only looking in that subset of information. So you're not overwhelming your customers. You're saying, I know for Thanksgiving, you're probably going to order pies, but let's chunk everything up into those subcategories so that you're not overwhelmed with your choices. Because if it's not mapped, it doesn't matter. Okay. You can also use modifiers to clear up confusion. So one thing when you're adding your none option, or not your none option, but your no option. So you have a burger and you want people to be able to customize it by removing what they don't want. Your pickles, your onions, your LT set. By putting those items in the remove category, you're also confirming for guests what comes on that burger, right? An LT set is a very common thing to have on a burger, for example, or mashed potatoes very normally come with gravy. But if you remove the gravy, then that also informs people that it's there. It's a little nuanced, but it is something to think about. Is if it's part of the remove category, then they know that it's something that they can remove. And you can also use your modifiers to upsell. And this is where checking your upcharge or your $ food prep in your point of sale is because some of those things may already exist. So let's say that you offer this awesome catering package, but built in the package, you don't have any pies. But let's say you've got pies built in your food prep modification in your point of sale, and then you can go ahead and add that. And then you don't have to have 17 meetings and put in a change ticket and all of these things to get IT to just tell you that it already exists. So you can use that for, and this is common on the to-go side is, do you want to add a brownie? Do you want to add a pie? Do you want cornbread muffins? Do you want to add a gallon of orange juice? So this is a good way while they're in the flow of ordering to add those things and be mindful about those things that you're adding. Don't make them too difficult to add. It's, I think about the upsell at the end of like the train ride when you're ordering online. And that pop-up box sometimes that they have for upselling is kind of like when you go to the grocery store and they have the impulse items right by the register, right? It's like a kind of, before you go, what do you want a Snickers bar? Heck yeah, you want a Snickers bar. So you're trying to take advantage of the impulse buy of the end of that order. Like, yes, I need a sweet treat. I just went through and did a whole catering order. So that can be a little complex to map, but making sure that they're in your upcharge food prep makes it really easy to get those added. And if they don't exist in your upcharge food prep, talk to your IT team and make sure it's, this is going to be a little nerdy, but in some points of sales, they don't let you nest an item underneath an item. It has to be a modifier. So if it doesn't exist as a modifier, work with your team to see what you can do in order to make that happen within the constraints of your point of sale. So if we use these modifiers to do all of these awesome things, you know what's going to happen? Straight to jail with analysis paralysis, dude, and let's just get pizza man. So make sure that you are a catering superhero and get these guys in jail. Make sure your customers can order online. And that concludes our fascinating discussion about advanced order mapping or menu mapping. And this will be in the upcoming months, of course, on Caterlink. So I'll let you guys know when that happens. And if you're looking for any mapping guidance before that, please feel free to reach out at Make Good Lemonade. We're happy to help you guys with any of your technical issues with menu mapping. So please feel free to reach out. And thank you guys for your time today. I really appreciate it. What kind of questions do you have? Yeah, I should probably stop sharing my screen. Go questions. Okay. Can you share examples of how thoughtful modifier... Wait, that's not right. How can we find the right balance between giving customers enough customization options and avoiding analysis paralysis that could cost us the sale? This is trial and error. And the best way to do it is start with as few customizations as possible. Your required modifiers, no modifiers that take away allergens, and and things that you can charge for. So for your add-ons, using things like adding on bacon for a charge, adding on cheese for a charge. Start with those 3 categories and then work with your team, getting feedback and looking at the special notes that people are putting on their orders. If you have a particular catering package and people keep adding a quart of pickles to their order, or adding extra lettuce or something like that, then consider putting that as a modifier. I would be very critical of adding modifiers to add food without adding an additional charge, because that people don't stop and think. They're like, yep, I want it. So if you make them pay for it, even if it's just a little bit of money, it makes them stop and think if they really, really want that item. But also too, that's going to improve your food cost, right, on those items. What's the best way to simplify complex catering packages without sacrificing important customization options like portion sizes or dietary adjustments? Well, one thing is if people have dietary needs, I would strongly push them to work with your catering sales managers. Your catering sales managers are there to handle your more complex order requests. So I would utilize them for complexities. And your online ordering doesn't have to be complex. It shouldn't be complex. The way that I would think about it is there's 2 types of customers that you should really be thinking about with online ordering. Those are the office managers who are ordering lunch for the entire group for some sort of meeting that they're having later this week, or the pharmacy salespeople who will order the food days and days in advance, just to pick up and bring to a customer. So think about them. They're the ones that you want to be able to very easily order online, without much hassle. But again, like, build relationships with them too. If you notice them ordering often, work with your catering sales managers to build a rapport with those customers to make sure that they're always getting what they want. But also too, having a really robust a la carte area on your catering online menu. So if they're worried that they won't get enough sides with this particular catering package or something, they can always go order more. It's also important too to always note how many people each catering package feeds, so they know if they're in the right range. There was a brand that I worked with a couple of years ago, and they actually just created categories that were based on how many people each package fed. So you know that if you had 41 guests, you'd be between 25 and 50. So you would know what appropriate package to get, which is a really unique way to do that. What's the impact of modifier and nesting choices on how items show up in the kitchen display system and on prep tickets? So your goal when you're building an online menu is to make sure that you're following the way that the kitchen needs to see the information. Your online ordering should not act any differently in the kitchen than an order that would be fired by somebody on a terminal, if that makes sense. What you're doing is just manipulating the way that it appears online, in order for the guests to more easily be able to order it. So, for example, if my point of sale has all of those different sides, and then the side salads with the different dressings on them, we're nesting those salad dressings so that somebody that's not ordering salad doesn't have to see this huge wall of text, right? But when it injects in the point of sale, it will inject exactly like any other order, because we've only manipulated how it looks, not how it injects. Though I would caveat that to say, always make sure that you're testing on a lab or a test location before you go live with anything, just to ensure that you set it up correctly. And one thing is, if you're new to menu mapping, I would strongly recommend going to one of your restaurants, either during the non-rush time between lunch and dinner or before they open, and just sit down and look at how you need to input the order into a terminal. So when you're asked a series of questions in a terminal at a restaurant, it's called a train ride. So, for example, you're choosing a combo group and you have to choose, so you have a steak combo. So you have to choose your steak, and then you have to choose the temperature, and then you have to choose your first side, your second side, your beverage. So that's called a train ride. And sometimes if I'm having difficulty with mapping for online ordering, I'll either go to a store or call the store and have them show me the train ride for what the point of sale is expecting, because you want to mirror the point of sale as much as possible when you're going through that. I hope that helps. Are there specific pitfalls to avoid when syncing modifier-heavy catering items between the POS and third-party online ordering, such as Olo or Monkey Media? I think, there are pitfalls. You have to make sure that you include all of your required modifiers, and your point of sale every point of sale is different, right? Like every restaurant is different. So you want to ensure that you're including all of your required modifiers, and sometimes something could be required, but you don't know it. So it's important to understand how that point of sale works so you can go and look at that item and see what's required. And for Olo and Monkey, more Olo, we never, when I've built things, we don't include everything that's not necessary because it's overwhelming. Monkey is different, right? Because Monkey is where all of your catering orders should come through. So for Monkey, being exhaustive of, what's included, but also working with your catering sales team, your people in the kitchen, to include additional modifiers that they can use on the back end. So on Monkey, you don't have to show everything online that you actually have in Monkey. And with Olo, you can separate between what your call center and restaurants see versus what your online customers see. You always want to be mindful that you're building out an exhaustive, robust list for the people who need to make those modifications for a call-in customer or a large catering guest, but you don't want somebody who's working by themselves without our assistance to do that. You want to make what appears to the customer simpler and what appears to your team as more robust, because you want your catering sales manager to be, yes, we can certainly add dino nuggets to your order. We don't necessarily want our customers to be able to order dino nuggets, because then we may just cater an entire dino nugget wedding when we don't intend to. And maybe that's a loss leader. Maybe that's an item that we're selling at cost. So we want to be mindful of what you're showing customers versus what you're leaving for your catering sales managers. And if you have really complex products, work with those people when it goes in the system to say, does this make sense to you? Testing at your locations, testing is a really important factor in this to make sure that it works. You never want your customer to find your problems for you. And same with your catering sales managers. Work with them really closely to make sure that you're giving them the information that they want and need. How does improper or incomplete menu mapping affect loyalty systems like Punch, especially when modifiers or upsells are involved? Whew, that's a loaded question. So let's say that there's so many caveats to this, but let's say that a certain part of your population, you have sleepy customers in your loyalty system, and you've decided that you're going to give away free French fries to your sleepy customers. You're going to send them a push notification, an email blast 2 hours before lunch and say, it sounds really good today, French fries. and order a combo meal and you'll get your French fries for free. So if you don't log those POS IDs for those French fries correctly into your campaign in Punch, you could have somebody that really wants a chicken sandwich and with those free French fries, and it won't work. So that will cause disappointment, and you won't accomplish what you're trying to do, right? So that customer that wants that chicken sandwich with their free French fries won't be able to order, and they were a sleepy customer in the first place. So you've just provided them with a poor experience. And you may not see them again, because when that push notification comes through again, they're like, why will I even try? Because it didn't work last time. So that can be really complex too, especially if you have franchisees that are using different points of sales than you or different POS IDs for those items. So, being as meticulous as you can, building that stuff as far in advance as you can so you're not rushing, because rushing on that stuff is where you see mistakes. So maybe making sure you get somebody who's really detail oriented who's building those campaigns in Punch. How do you decide which modifiers should be required, optional, or hidden, especially when the same item appears in both dine-in and catering menus? That's a good question. So when I say required modifiers, these are modifiers that are required by the point of sale. So if you order a steak, there's probably a requirement in your point of sale to find out what the temperature of that steak is, because that steak can't go out the door without us knowing how to cook it, right? So learning from your point of sale what the required modifiers are is your first step. And for hidden, at the very, very minimum, it's those weird inventory items. So if we choose a turkey feast, asking somebody to then choose turkey after they've chosen the turkey feast can cause confusion, but also it's unnecessary, right? So hiding those unnecessary modifiers is a good place to start with hidden. Also, if you want to manipulate it, like we were talking about in that example of the catering packages. So we have a silver package, but we want to make it a little more robust online, right? So we're offering the turkey, the prime rib, and the ham. So we're hiding that modifier just for good flow for the customer with online ordering. And optional, start with removing allergens and adding upsell items. So adding bacon at a charge, adding cheese at a charge, adding pickles at a charge. The reason why I would start with those is you want people to think about it, right? Like if something is free, they're going to want extra everything on their sandwich. It's not something that they'll actually have to process, right? So by charging for those particular items, it makes them stop and think. And then after you do that, working with your team, seeing what special instructions or notes customers are putting online, finding out where the pain points are for your team in the kitchen. Like people are always asking for this one thing, and we really want to charge for that, or we'd really like to see it as an option, so I don't have to interpret what somebody put in like 15 characters in the special instructions note. So I would work there, but consider it like a living, breathing entity for online ordering, right? Is make sure that you're always asking for feedback from your team so that it will evolve throughout time to make sure that it's more usable for the team. What's your advice for menu mapping brands that operate across multiple platforms? It's challenging. I'll give you that, especially if you have franchisees who are using different points of sales or different items in the point of sale, different PLUs or item IDs. Is make sure you have somebody who's dedicated for that kind of stuff. So you have like a SME for it. Also, I would recommend using I would try and find like an aggregating company. So for example, I would try and use an aggregator. I think that points of sales that offer online ordering are great, but it's not their area of expertise. So if you're looking for a customized online experience, it is in your best interest to find something else to provide online ordering. And I think using some sort of aggregator, something that integrates with a lot of things. So, we used Olo, and Olo integrated with all of these, except there are some functions that it doesn't have for a complex catering, for complex catering needs. There are some things that it doesn't do for the back of house. If there were an Olo and Monkey integration, I would say use them both, because I think that they cover most of the bases, but there's nothing yet. Maybe soon. But try and use things that aggregate and send out that information as much as you can. So, Monkey integrating with Easy Cater, or Olo integrating with like Uber and DoorDash. So, using those pieces of software that just push out your menu mapping to a kiosk or to the third place delivery. So using something that pushes that out saves your team time and money. So I'm sure if you actually broke it down and crunched the numbers, having one of those aggregators is going to be a lot easier than having somebody map across. And actually, I know from experience, from being up, until 6 o'clock in the morning, mapping all of those things, it's going to save you a lot of time and energy. What's a smart way to test new menu mapping before pushing them live across all stores? Testing. So one of two ways: either you have like a test location or a lab that you can test that information in, or working with the team at one restaurant to push that information out. Whenever we pushed a new restaurant live with online ordering, we always sent them orders to make sure that they came through okay. So working with a trusted team in a restaurant to push that information through. And it's really a great way to get feedback too, right? If they're like, I don't understand what this is, or I don't understand how this looks, that can help you with a lot of headaches that you may have down the road. How often should we revisit and revise our mapping menu based on customer ordering behavior or kitchen feedback? I would say if you have just done a menu overhaul, or if you've just started with online ordering, I would recommend, at least for the first month, maybe weekly, and then going to monthly and quarterly. Just especially at first, doing the first couple of weeks, especially addressing kitchen pain points. You don't want your kitchen to suffer very long, but also the people that work in your kitchen are usually very engineering. So if you don't fix it, they'll find a workaround. So your best bet is to try and fix that as soon as possible. So, actively ask your kitchen team, what are we seeing? How's it going? Especially like those restaurant managers who are super excited to give you feedback. Work with them to get information on how they're handling it. But, as it goes on, you can do that less and less. And then, you're probably pushing out new menu items every quarter. So use it as an opportunity. We're updating our seasonal menu with this. Is there anything else that we need to address, so that it's fresh in your team's mind? Can you share examples of how thoughtful modifier mapping has led to increased upsells or better average check sizes in catering orders? Yeah. So increased upsells. There was so many. During Thanksgiving is a really good time with people are hoping to cater their entire Thanksgiving meal through you, right? And another thing is that people want to make sure that their guests are well fed for catering events, right? So, because it's usually family. So, there's a couple of things that we did specifically for that, because that's what's coming to mind, because that's what I'm thinking about right now. Maybe I just need to eat some turkey. Is we would offer an upsell of extra gravy with our turkeys. So you could order a turkey and then a quart. You could order a turkey and then a quart of extra gravy. That was like $10 or something. And people are like, heck yeah, I have this turkey. I love having extra gravy with my turkey. So that's like a really low hanging fruit. Also, like extra sides. So if you have this package and it comes with 2 sides and somebody's like, obviously we need mashed potatoes and gravy. Obviously we need sweet potatoes. And they're like, you know what? I really want to make sure that we've got green bean casserole and cranberries. So offering extra sides for an additional cost sort of plays into this is a feast and it's one day only, so we should indulge a little bit. And also with desserts, there are a lot of catering packages that when I was on the brand side, we didn't. Desserts weren't necessarily part of it, but if you're building out this Thanksgiving turkey meal, let's say it comes with a pumpkin pie, but let's say some of us aren't fans of pumpkin pie, but you can add on an apple pie for an additional cost. That's a really easy low-hanging fruit. So thinking about those things that people might want to include. So like if you're doing a taco bar, for example, do you want chips and guac and salsa to be something that they offer? Well, heck yeah, we want that too. So just working with your team to understand what those low-hanging fruit, or if I were doing this, what's something that I would want to include? That's a good question. All right, that's it. Thank you guys for joining today. I really appreciate it, and I hope that you have a fabulous rest of your day.